Okay, that's looking better now. Alright, let's see, I'm gonna wait for people to hop on. I've never actually done a development live stream before, so we'll see how this goes. You'll have to leave me comments and see exactly what people think of this, if it's exciting or just bores them to tears eventually. Um, so for most of my, I'll start off while I'm waiting for this to load. I do most of my development inside of Eclipse. Use one of the later builds, not the ones that ship with my Linux distro. But it works pretty well. It does tend to have a bit of a memory leak. I've told to only use like half a gig RAM, and it's used quite a lot more. So I just have to kill it and restart it every once in a while. Let's see. Hey, Roundhouse Warrior again. Let's see. Did that just crash? Oh, you don't. That's a bug in my code. Is if you resize the window while it's trying to initialize some stuff, it'll crash because the OpenGL context is interrupted. Let's see. So while we're waiting for stuff to really spin up, have people had a chance to play with the newest IR version, the 1.4.0 release? All right. Hola, GC Music. Oop, not multiplayer. Okay. So you can see I've got very creative world names for development. um, let's see. This should be some pretty new stuff. I've been spending a good bit of time trying to rewrite the track system, in some cases from the ground up. It should be fully compatible with what was there before. But this right here is brand new and something that people have been asking for a very, very long time. So this is an example of some track that I've actually just gotten working. This is the first time I've actually booted up this track in this successful configuration. So let's leave it, or let's come back this way a little bit. So either type here, or I probably won't see Discord because I've got it muted at the moment. So if I come over here and shift-click, places this track, and it's not exactly perfect. You can see how there's like extra pieces here and not enough pieces in other places. But I'll go into exactly what's happening behind the scenes in a minute. I just wanted to start off with the piece that I'm really excited about getting working. Let's see if everything works right. There we go. It's following that just fine. Interestingly, it was speeding up a little bit on that curve. Was it? No, that might have just been me. Okay. I'm not sure why it's doing that little hop over at the end, but whatever. Okay. I gotta fix that. All right. So this right here, this is a new track type. Let's see. So you've got your straight, your crossing, your slope, your turn, your switch, your turntable, and now you've got this custom thing. I haven't actually added a name for this yet. Some of these settings should eventually be hidden. Though interestingly enough, I think grade crossing will work with this. So we're gonna see if that what breaks if I turn that on. But this is a way of defining Bezier curves in Minecraft. So Beziers actually. Let me pull open Chrome just to show the people who aren't programmers what this is. This right here was a cool site that I found. I think you guys should be able to see this. So this is what the immersive railroading track is actually doing behind the scenes for these custom track types. I've figured out a way of saying we've got a start position and an end position, and then Bezier curves have these control positions around them. So I can automatically place the control position at a certain level so that it works correctly. And then when the player is rotating around this point, all I'm doing is rotating where this point is relative to that second position. The interesting piece is I've actually rewritten most of the I've rewritten a huge amount of code so far to get this working. A lot of it's been cleanup, and I've taken shortcuts in the past with pieces of the code that I wasn't very happy with, and this was a good chance to go through and try and clean them up a little bit. So now that you see that's what the math is doing behind the scenes. If I place down this, I can link the Bezier curve, or no, I can link the track endpoint, which is a work in progress name, to that. Whoa, that's interesting. As I've said, this is very work in progress code. Let's reset it so it's facing a specific way. Wipe you out. There we go. Yeah, I can wipe this piece out. Alright, back to here. And come over here. Okay. So it's working in one orientation, but it looks like the grade crossing actually works for this, which is pretty neat. So let's do something like that, maybe? Or that even. That's a little bit crazy. We haven't done anything like that in IR before. Shift click to place, and there we go. The grade crossing code is working just fine with this. I've actually rewritten a few of the different pieces of track already to use this model. It should, in theory, work exactly the same as it's always done. There we go. It's following that right along the line. And interestingly enough, the code for this is actually simpler than the code for the straights, which is that's got its own set of problems. But let's see. So, all right, let me walk you guys through what's going on code-wise behind the scenes and park this train somewhere a little bit better. Ooh, that's off by a little bit. Stop. Okay. Options to enforce minimal curve links. Probably at some point. This is really at the, hey, I just got it working like a couple minutes ago sort of code, and I figured I'd throw together a stream and explain some of what's going on. So the way that the track used to work, before I dive into what's here now, is it had two main functions without going into the details. It would have a list of track pieces, and that's every single block that it places as far as when it tries to place the immersive railroading track. It places down one main piece, which stores the render information and all the gory details about what the block actually is, and then a bunch of other gag pieces that point back at that main block. So they're really just placeholders that point back to that main piece. So that's that track list. Then it also has a get render data function, and each one of the track pieces, so we've got a couple different classes here. If I go up to the track package, so you've got slope, straights, switches, turns, pretty much everything you would normally expect. But each one of these, like if I go to build or turn, there's a whole lot of math in each one of these, which is all sorts of fun complexity. What I ended up doing is I implemented a new build iterator class, and You guys can let me know online if this is getting too dry. But I'm gonna check the comments real quick. Stay the same height as the edge. I'm not sure, Larky. I'll have to think about that. The good news is the code is a lot easier to. It's implementing stuff like that has become a lot easier. So you place markers for point 1 and point 2 like RTM. Well, this is essentially doing the same thing. You place down your first marker is your track blueprint, and then you link up. Excuse me. You link up your second piece just with an additional marker piece. So it should function exactly the same, but it'll be a little bit. You'll just be setting the external point. Let's see, someone's saying something. I'm sorry, I don't speak. I believe that's Spanish, but something about the Allegheny and the Challenger. Okay. Okay, that's a good question. What about points? I am not sure I'm going to integrate this code with the point code, because the point code is very, very complex. That would be a pretty fundamental change to how all of that code works, which is already a lot more complicated than I'd like. So that's going to be a probably not. So you'd probably want to make a standard point, just make it short and then extend it however you want using the flexible track. Okay, so going back into the code a little bit. So we've established that when you set up one of these builders, and this builder just takes a rail info, and the rail info has things like what's the rail bed made out of, what's the starting position, what's the end position, how long should it be, where was the player facing when they clicked. So instead of hard coding this for every single track type, which is what I used to do, these two functions are made to be dynamic. So I've created this getPath function, and that's what's implemented. And this is like, think about drawing a line on a piece of paper and following that line 1 inch at a time, or maybe half an inch. The step size is, are you stepping an inch, are you stepping a meter, how far are you stepping? And what it's doing is it's breaking down what the user has drawn into n number of pieces that are all about all about step size. And we can go to declarations project. And this will show all the different implementations. So the simplest one is going to be the straight builder. And that's, you can see what we're doing is we figure out our angle from the direction the player was facing, and then we go from 0 to the length of the track that was specified, and step by step size. And if this is getting too dry, let me know, and I'll go back to playing around in game. But this is kind of the simplest one you can do. So you write your getPath function to take the info about what the player wants and step through the line they want you to draw in small little chunks. And each one of those little chunks is either going to be something used to, let's say, have the train follow that path and do some interpolation there, or to draw it. And to draw it, what it's doing is it's saying, well, we know a piece of track is a meter long, so we're just going to step by a meter along the track. And a little bit more complex one is the slope. This is extending the straight one, because the slopes and the straights are essentially the same code, but what it's doing is it's figuring out the height that it should have as it iterates through. So that's kind of extending that. The really fun one, and this is where we get into the Bezier stuff, which is this stuff. And if you want to follow along at home, this is point 1, this is point 2, this is control 1, and this is control 2. So what we do is, Java has a library for creating these sorts of curves. And I've utilized that heavily. I may end up doing some of the math myself in the end, but I've hacked it well enough that I can at least get these proof of concepts working. So the cubic curve is also known as a Bezier curve. That's what I was drawing in Firefox before. So we have, where do I want to go with this? We have, okay. So what we're doing is we're assuming that the first point is at 0, 0, and we're figuring out the next position. So 0, 0, let me update this. So this is always hard-coded to 0, 0. So we're given this point. We don't need to calculate that. We know that's at 0. We know the other point is going to be whatever that custom place that the user clicked on. And the user, so we calculate that as next pose. So it's either defaulted to this, which is actually kind of an awful value. Then that's supposed to be that. That'll fix some stuff when I start that up again. I think. It needs to be 180 minus angle. Anyways, so we have this position, and we figure out the angles in which the player is facing. So the player can be facing this way, if you can follow where I'm drawing with my mouse, or they could be facing this way, all sorts of different directions. So we need to figure out how we want to move this piece. So we figure out that angle for which direction the player is looking, and that's how we calculate this control node. And that's control 1. And we do the same thing for control 2, if control 2 has been specified. And so that's what most of this is doing. And it's handling a couple cases where when you first place it down, it doesn't actually have a value. It's doing some awful math stuff because I'm... it may surprise some of you, but the math in this is actually my least favorite part. There's types of math that I really enjoy, like foundational proofs, which are some really cool recursive, usually recursive proofs around some stuff, and that's getting way too in the weeds. But there's certain types of math that I like, and most of the math inside of immersive railroading is this type of math that I really don't like, which is the very tedious geometry. But at the end of the day, I can usually hack it well enough to get it to work. So, alright, back to this. So we've got control 1, control 2. So we've got 0, 0, control 1, control 2, and the next position. This is where the player was standing and clicked on when they placed that second piece. And what we do is we use this little function. And I'm not sure how many people watching are programmers, but I'll do a quick dive into what recursion is. Recursion is calling the same function until you hit a base case. So it's like you've got, here's a good example. You've got 1,000 people in a room, and you want to count from, or okay, so you've got 1,000 people in a room, hypothetically speaking, and you give the first person a piece of paper that has this curve drawn on it. Actually, this is going to be a good analogy. So you give the first person standing next to you a piece of paper with your curve drawn on it. And that's what this curve is here. It's a piece of paper with our curve drawn on it. And that first person, he rips it in half, and he gives it to 2 other people. So I'm too lazy. I'm not going to break it up. I'm going to give it to 2 other people. And then each of those people say, well, I'm too lazy. This piece is too big. I'm going to rip it up and give it to 2 more people. So what you're doing is every single person will do a certain, all they'll do is rip it in half. And eventually you'll end up with microscopic pieces of paper unless you set a base case. And so what we do is we say once the piece of paper gets small enough that you can't really tear it in half anymore, what you do is you say, okay, well, let's gather all those little pieces of paper back together. And that's recursion. If any of your programmer friends, or if you're a computer scientist or programmer, anything like that, that's what recursion is. It's taking a large problem and splitting it up into small pieces and handing it off to other people, and then at the end, collecting it all back. So this right here is our end collection, this results list, and here's the curve that this function has been given, and this is the step size is the smallest piece we want to break this up into. So we say if the size of the paper is still bigger than the size I want to deal with, just split it up again. So we subdivide it, and we call the same function again. So you can think of it as you're in a crowd of clones, and each clone does a certain amount of work. I hope that kind of made sense. I've never tried to explain recursion to a general audience before. Yep. Okay. Well, that's been enough of me droning on about this. But in the end of the day, you can see how I'm taking the piece of paper with the large curve drawn on it, breaking it up into itty-bitty little pieces, and then passing that on to passing it on to my general piece of code that figures out how it should be following the curve. Let's see. Oh, someone's asking about Minecraft 1.13 and future versions. I'm not even going to worry. I'm already maintaining IR for 3 different Minecraft versions. I'm not even going to worry about 1.13 until it's stable and a bunch of people have ported to it. We'll see how crazy it is. The good news about IR is I've rewritten most of the render system is completely outside of Minecraft's because I've had to do some really fun stuff for performance. Let's see, and feel free to ask other questions. Anything about stuff you'd want on the mod versus stuff that you think is in there that shouldn't be in there, and questions about what some future plans are. Questions about how any of the code works. I'm happy to go into depth explaining any of this. Okay, there we go. So let's do this example again. So we've got our kind of crappy default piece. This should eventually just be sort of a jog over. So placing it down, the original goal was to have it look like this, but somehow I've managed to mess that up in a really fun way. And I'm actually going to switch this back off of grade crossing mode. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. This. Cool. You know, we could even do that. That's actually, let's come back here. I'm curious what the math is going to try and do. If we try and do a horseshoe curve, is that going to function? That's actually going to work. How about that? All right, place that down, and let's give it a try. Throttle up. Let's see, curved slopes. That's actually, that's something we can work on next. Try and start playing with that code. That should be interesting. I'll try not to bore you guys to death, but yeah, we can start playing with that code and see if that's something that I can do in the next. I think I'll probably stream for another half an hour. I'm actually really busy at work recently, but I needed to blow off some steam, so this is a project that is not in any way, shape, or form related to what I work on day to day, which is quite nice. And Dank London is asking about Shannon. Can you PM me on Discord your crash log when she doesn't, or not your crash log, but your log when she doesn't show up? Yeah, I can take a look at that later. There's a couple outstanding bugs I need to fix, but for now I'm just playing. Okay, so let's try and add vertical to this. How do I want to do this? So it's going to be another Bezier curve, I think. Actually, no. It's easier if I don't do a Bezier curve. Let's try to take a look at the slope code and integrate that, because in theory we can just look at. Actually, no. Well. We'll see. Let's try this the simple way. I know. Let me try and find the. There was someone posted some really interesting. This one. This is. Open original. That's really low quality. So this is from a mod called OpenFlexitrack. This is something Don Bruce, if you're familiar with Rails of War and MTS, he's the main dev for the MTS, and he's released patches for Rails of War in the past. So he built this flag-based system, which looks pretty darn cool, I've got to say. And at some point, maybe by the end of the day, we can have something like this working. But he open-sourced OpenFlexitrack a while back, and I tried to help do some work with that. But the way that Don writes his track placement code, I really, really don't like. It's crazy and it's clever and it's brilliant. I've got to give him props for figuring out and accomplishing what he did with that code. But it got to the point where I was starting to think about some other stuff in immersive railroading and realized that I could do some refactoring and get this working without too much hassle inside of immersive railroading without having to depend on OFT. OFT is still out there if anyone wants to maintain it, and there's a pull request out there that makes immersive that makes it compatible with Track API. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, yeah. A lot of this was inspired. The functionality for this was inspired by AnyMods. Nothing I've come up with so far. I mean, as the actual implementation, I'd like to think is pretty clever, but the going through and actually figuring out the user interface and the way that this interaction style, I take no credit for. This is all pre-existing stuff that people have come up with. Okay, so all right. So what we need to do is we need to figure out the slope, and the slope is going to be. Let's see. Slope is going to be the distance between point A and point B, which is really just this distance I've calculated up here. So I've calculated that ahead of time. So we need to know the distance. I'm going to rename this because this is going to be horizontal distance. Horizontal distance. And my IDE can refactor that name. So we've got horizontal distance. We can do double vert distance. And by default, for the standard track, we're just going to set that to 0. We're not going to set a value here. Still don't know why that didn't work. Angle plus 90. Let's try that for the default. Okay, so we've got vertical distance, and for this case, this is where we can figure this out. We can do vertical distance is info.custominfo.placement position. So placement position is what you click on when you're using those pieces. So we've got custom info and we've got placement info. Placement info is where the first piece is, where the first marker is, and custom info is the second marker. And if anyone's reading through this code and finding really bad variable names, I suck at naming things. I say that at work all the time. I will constantly go and ask people, what the heck should I name this variable, because I know that you're going to get mad at me when I put this in for review. Alright, placement position dot y. So that's our y is vertical height in Minecraft. We subtract info dot custom info dot, or no, nope, we do info dot placement position dot y, placement position dot y. Okay, so this should give us our vertical distance. Let's see. This is going to be interesting because I've never actually tested this code where this goes negative, but we're going to find out what happens. So now we've got our vertical distance. So going back to the slope code, because I'm just copying and pasting my own work at this point. So that's going to go down to here. Slope equals 1 divided by info.length. Okay. Instead of info.length, this is going to be... Oh, that's... Okay, so this is going to be distance divided by vert distance. Did I find that? And these are both what? They're both doubles. Okay, so I just got to cast that to float. So doubles and floats. If you're curious, a double is like so an integer is a number from 0 to 2 to the 31st power, which is some really big number, which I can never remember off the top of my head. So integers are big numbers. So negative number to big number. Doubles are like saying you've got one number dot another number. So you're sticking two ints together but putting the decimal point in the middle. And then floats are just magic. Floats are a way of using some really weird math that I never actually learned how they work, and storing the same stuff doubles do, but in smaller, in less memory. So floats are more efficient than doubles, but they're less precise, depending on their application. Anyways, if you were curious what's a float and what's a double, they're both number dot some other number, if that makes any sense. I'm waving my hands while I'm explaining this, and I realize you can't actually see what I'm gesturing about. Okay, so we've got our slope, and we're going to do... Alright. So we'll do the distance between P1 and P2 here. 3D P2 equals new 3D. I'm just going to copy this because I'm lazy. 2 P2. Okay. So we can get our distance. And this is going to be position, step, angle, curve, and height. Or no, height is this right here. This is going to be no, we're going to do P1 dot distance to P2. So this is the total distance of this particular step, because the way that my recursive function works, it's not actually a consistent distance, which can be a problem. Okay. This is going to be... this is not actually going to work, because I need to accumulate this. I guess that might work. I'm going to do... So this is going to be the change in height. So this is how much we're changing for that step. Height delta is going to be... Actually, no, I can do this much simpler. This is going to be do that. So we're stepping up by that distance each time. Okay. So this is our y value, and this is actually going to break if I do more than one, but we're going to have fun and try it anyways. Alright. And this may just break horribly. No, I don't need a face cam because I'm sitting here in my pajamas after work. I mean, if you... I think someone has found who I actually am. I mean, my name is publicly visible on my GitHub. I just have a fairly hard to Google name. So... Alright. And it should load in a minute. I'm gonna grab a glass of water. Oh, oh, you're in Interbrood. Okay, that makes more sense. What the? Okay, I guess I clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry, I should have turned off my mic before that. Okay. So, whoa, whoa. Okay, that's very wrong. Okay. Alright, so let's see what happens if I place that down and do... Nope. Ew. Okay, so if it goes more than one, that just breaks horribly. That's... Okay, so what the heck did I do wrong? So we got slope, and we've got height accumulator, distance to distance 2 times height. Huh. What am I doing wrong? Let's see. So So that's working. Oh, this still has the, turn off the blueprint, or not blueprint, the grade crossing. Alright, so if I come up here, it goes to a single piece and doesn't do anything. So it is actually placing track, interestingly enough. Still calculating that list correctly. It's just rendering really, really strange. It thinks that that's the slope? Height accumulator. So it starts off as 0 and increases each time. I mean, it's placing down track, it's just not showing it. What you know what? I'm gonna give this a running start because this may launch me into oblivion. I've had that happen before. This is, nope, it just doesn't do anything. Okay. Darn. Let's see. Place you back down. Also, I've got to give Legend props for the new peppercorn model. It looks absolutely fantastic. I especially like the blue theme. The green theme's pretty nice, but blue, this just looks sleek. Alright, so let's do some debugging. Alright, save and quit, and come back over here. So height accumulator starts at 0. Before we were passing in 0. And the way it's calculating is so this is p1.distance to p2 times height. The slope horizontal distance divided by vertical distance. Let's start by printing out what those are. Wait, vert distance. Also, that shouldn't work, because I'm dividing by 0. What the heck am I doing? That should never work. Alright, now I'm really confused. Alright, so let's add some print lines here. So that was probably going to infinity, which would make sense. Why I was just not doing anything it was supposed to. No, that still doesn't make sense. Okay. Anyways, let's start debugging. So we'll do system.out.println vert dist. We'll do this, this, and that. So we're going to print out this placement position y. So we want all 3 of these values. And I don't usually explain what I'm doing while I'm coding, so if I just get really quiet for a minute, start yelling in chat, and I'll realize that I got lost in thought. Okay. This is known as the by the seat of your pants. Let's see what happens when I poke it method of debugging. That's this, that's this. Close that instance, wait for this one to start. ORT. Yep. Yeah, Enderboot's getting you caught up. If you haven't checked out the changelog for 1.4.0, there's some really fantastic stuff in that. I spent a ton of time going through with Visual VM and, to figure out where all the memory was being eaten up in immersive railroading. There's still some optimizations I can do, but it's much, much, much more reasonable. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to actually make this smaller. So hopefully you can still all see that. And down here is the log for Minecraft, so you should see when I... did that go away? May have accidentally deleted that. Okay. That's fun. What's going on? Why can't... There's a block here that is... Oh, you know, because I said it, that's... I'm being an idiot. I need to set this to blueprint mode. Duh. Okay. Go from here, so we've linked that. Come over here and click. Now we can see this debug information down here. That is set to -1, which it really should not be. So the first bug I found is the custom info and the placement position have different Y values, so I've got to look into where I'm setting those. And so if I wanted a curve up, let's just try going up like 3 blocks for fun. that is getting a screenshot. I might make this the screenshot for the stream or something. Oh, damn. Alrighty then. Alright, and if I set this back to that's 0. So that's getting a divide by 0 error, which means that's infinite. And if it goes negative, it's wrong thing. If it goes negative, it just sets it down to -1, which... That's interesting. Try driving up that. Why not? Actually, no, I know that's not going to work, but I can try launching the peppercorn at it. Yeah, let's try and build this. Let's see if I can break my machine. Wow. That's going up like 30 blocks for each one. I mean, that's odd. Okay. Well, at least we know why it's going horribly wrong somehow. So that's set. Okay, real quick. That is, so vert distance is 1. Oh, because it's, I got these backwards. It's vertical divided by horizontal, not horizontal divided by vertical. That would explain it. Pow. That's fun. Railroad to heaven. I wish I could play like, actually no, I'd probably get a DMC a takedown if I doing that. Let's see. And I'm going to hop out because I've got no idea what's going to happen. Pow! Okay, that's pretty reasonable. All things considered. Alright, let's break that and go back to the code real quick. I'll leave that open. Okay, so we think that the slope I was calculating wrong because of that. Alright. The next piece was, so we don't need to debug this anymore, because we know it's, we kind of know it's, I'll fix the other bug where it's getting set to 1- later on. Well, actually, no, I should do that now. Well, actually, first this should be set slope to 0. If, so we're actually, horizontal distance should never be 0, but just because I never know what's going to go wrong in my code. So that's not 0. Slope equals that. Okay. So, okay, that makes more sense. So we're dividing the vertical distance by the horizontal distance. Yeah, ORT 451, math is very hard. That's one of my least favorite parts about this. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. ORT 1.4 is already out if you want to play with it. This is probably going to be 1.5. This is going to be a big enough change that it'll be in it'll be a whole new version number. Okay. All right. So let's try and figure. So custom info. I know. Let me close everything else on here because whoop, that's not what I wanted to do. So there's 2 places where this is set. And if you didn't know, immersive railroading is like 25,000 lines of code, and a couple hundred files. That, yeah. So this is 26,364 lines of code, and 260 Java files. Yeah, Clark, Andrew Boot, it'll be in a dev... so it'll be released as a 1.4 dev build, because I don't actually increment the version number until I do the 1.5 release. just because I'm lazy. Alright, back on track, because I'm getting off track. So this is our thing. So we need to figure out, so custom info is being set to something different than placement info. And I think I know why. Because if we go to item track endpoint, that's the new thing that I've added. We need to do this once at the top, I think, because if we look at, so this is the code where on item use, so this is when you use the item on the ground. The other thing, it creates the placement info from the item, where the player's looking, and where they're clicking. But if you look at track blueprint, which has almost the same code, and this is where you shoot yourself in the foot. If you have almost identical code in two places, pose equals pose up. Interesting. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So this actually goes to the block up from where you're clicking. Right? Yeah. So that line right there has to line up with this line here. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I shot myself in the foot with that one. But you think about it, what it's registering is the block you're clicking on, which is one below where you actually want to place the track. So we'll see how this works. The good news is IR loads faster than it used to, so that means less waiting time in the screen, hopefully. I also need to go eat dinner. So, yeah, I guess we'll get a basic version of this working, and then I'll probably call it a night. And the biggest thing is leave in the comments if you want me to do this more often, because a lot of the times I'll just be sitting here having these same conversations with myself in my head while I'm programming. And it is actually kind of fun to try and explain what I'm doing while I'm doing it, and kind of helps find errors. Maybe, kind of, sort of. Yeah, we'll see how much time I have to work on immersive railroading. I'm actually, if you guys don't mind if I ramble, I'm building a more excellent. Do it often. Discord voice chat while you're at it. I can, but I'm not sure that people can hear what I'm saying while I do it unless I reconfigure my audio system. Ooh, fun. That's working again. Alright, and we link this up. That's reasonable. I'll fix that so that it has an even more reasonable default later on, but... hey, look at that! That actually worked! I can't believe it. Place it down? Holy cow. I know a train will not actually... okay, I actually don't know that. I'm fairly certain that a train will not actually work on this. But we're going to try it anyways. Well, would you look at that? I would not have called that. Oh yeah, screen... well, okay, I guess I can... that's work. Anyone on Discord who wants to see it, or if anyone wants to take screenshots as I'm going and post them on Discord, feel free. But that means I have to switch out of this and find my screenshots directory and all sorts of stuff. Okay, so that kind of doesn't work. Alright, so coming back over here. It kind of goes up a little bit. It's interesting. Alright, so let's then take a look at that next code. I still can't believe that worked as well as it did. Wow. Alright, so we'll leave that open just in case I want to play with that anymore. Okay, so we've looked at the track placement code a lot so far. We're going to dive into the physics a little bit. And I've put the movement under the physics because it's a lot of geometry and vector math, so it's more geometry, less physics, but it's all kind of in the same area. So I've got the movement simulator, the track simulator, or the movement simulator, movement track, and then physics accumulator. movement track, what that does is movement track is how I implement track API. Movement simulator is how my trains use track API to follow the track. The reason why track API is a dependency is because movement simulator and movement track don't actually talk to each other. They talk through track API, which means that any other mod that implements track API, my trains can go on their track and their trains can go on my track, which you can see in some of the new videos. Which I'm actually really stoked about that. I talk with Eternal Blue Flame every once in a while, and it sounds like he might add compatibility for track API at some point, which would be really awesome. Let's see, what was I doing? Heights, following heights. Okay, so lots of crazy math. Okay, so next position inner. This is the function where we get the world, the current position, the rail, the sort of direction the train is traveling and how far it's traveling in that direction. So we figure out what that's going to look like in x and y coordinates. So you're going to be stepping a little bit x and a little bit y and a little bit z. So that's this delta. And this right here, this is the turn code. This is really, 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 really awful. And I'm actually hoping that I can remove this once I rewrite the turn to use the new iteration logic. Here's the crossing logic. Crossings, interestingly enough, I'm not sure I've seen anyone do this. We're going to break new ground. I'm not sure if even I've tried this. See, now this is the problem. I'm not sure which one of these is the actual one. I think this was the... Yeah, this is the later one. Let's see. Oh, Eternal Blue Flame. He's making Traincraft. Oh, there we go. Okay, just took a minute to render. Yeah, he's trying to take over the Traincraft development. This is a really nice guy. Or gal. I think he's a guy. Anyways, I'll just leave it as Eternal Blue Flame. Right, I was showing the thing that I don't think anyone's actually figured out yet. So we place this down on a curve, and we create another one of these, and go to crossing. We place a crossing here. Here? Yeah, we'll place a crossing here. And we'll place a piece of track here. See, now, you would think that this wouldn't work. And I broke something. This is why this has not yet been released. So we're going to place down 45-degree turn to get into this mess in the first place. Right, because that's like this. Whoa, that's fun. Alright, so it turns out that I've actually broken most of my code fairly spectacularly, in ways that I could not have predicted. How can I test? Okay, I can test it coming back this way. Let's do, whoa, that's a little bit funky. Link this, go to 45 over here. Alright. I've done something really terrible, and I don't know what. Oh, no, actually, that's never worked. You know what? Bug me later on in the stream and I'll show off what I'm trying to show. But if you build this sort of structure, this grade crossing, any angle you go over it, it'll just continue on that angle. That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah. So, going back to, not here. So that's what that code does. So if it's a crossing, it just continues along its merry way. It doesn't actually check that. Turntable is its own crazy bit of code, which I won't get into. And straights. Straights are surprisingly complicated because of the way I wrote them. And this can actually all go away. I could actually remove all that code now. I'm going to change this if... Not going to be terribly efficient, but instance of builder custom. That's going to break stuff in even more fun ways. that'll work. So that would mean this code doesn't even get hit anymore. Anyway, so what this is doing is, I'm going to talk through this real quick, so I'm going to have to patch it, and just so I even remember what I'm doing here, because it's been a long day. So we get the rail, this render info is really not the right name for this. Again, I suck at naming things. This is actually just the rail info. And we get the builder for the track, and we break up the paths into 0.5 chunks. So it's a 0.5 step each time. So then I've got my list of steps along the track. So that's all. Going back to the the recursion I was explaining before, is I've broken up the curve into a bunch of little pieces that are each that long, or they should be about that long. They won't actually be because my math is awful, and I still need to fix that. But then we get the center, we get the relative. Right. I forget what this does. I need to eat something. Positions.get of 0. So this gets the first position, then we iterate through all the positions, we find the closest one to where the train is now. Then we take the distance it wants to travel, rotate that by the yaw that is for that piece of track is pointing at, and that gives us kind of a line to follow that's locked to where it is on the curve. And then we add the curve delta to that, and we subtract it. So we've got our current position, we add a little bit or we remove a little bit. And whichever one is closest to estimated is the one we use. So we're really just, we're doing two estimations to try and move one way and try and move the other way. Yeah, Nate, that's again, this is the reason that it's taken me a year and a half to get here. This and hacking around all the weird stuff that Minecraft does behind the scenes. Okay, so what we're not doing inside of here is we're not taking into account horizontal positions. So we're going to do this in a really awful stepping way. So we want to look at get rail height. We're going to do, so this is curve delta, current position. Alright, so we're going to do float next height equals, and this is going to be, oh, now this is interesting. You guys mind if I take a quick break? I just need to have a couple bites to eat. I'll be back in about 3 minutes. I'm just going to leave this here. I mean, technically, so Andrew Boucher pointed out in the comments that he thought I lived off code. Technically, the only reason I have this chicken is because I have a job. And the only reason I have a job is because I can code. So technically, this chicken came out of code. So, there. Alright, so what we need to do, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And actually, you know what? We're going to do it the simple, easy way for now, and then we're going to do some interpolation. So what we've got is, let me just make a comment. Or no, we'll just do, so you've got block, 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 block. And then you've got that, you've got that. So what you want to do is you want to very gently follow that slope right there. What we're going to start off by doing is we're just going to go up to that level and stay at that level and then hop up to the next level and hop up to the next level. So this is going to be very jerky slopes to start off with, and then we'll make it a little bit better. Okay, so how was I calculating this before? Yeah, this is the code I'm trying to get rid of. So this is... Okay, so we do next dot get rail height. Right, because I did it that way. That's... I might have to copy and paste some of that awful code. Okay, so this is going to be... I think... Let me check the other places where I'm using this. Get rail height... Position height. So I'm just using that height directly, I believe. Okay. Am I doing... So we've got height offset is 0.35. So where else are we using height offset? Negative height offset. Okay, and then at the end we're adding back on the height offset, because the height offset is the size of the rail. Or the vertical height of the rail. Plus the height offset. Okay, so we're going to have rail.get position.get y. So this is our y position plus the height of the rail piece plus the height offset. And we just need to cast this to a float. Cast it to a float. And we're going to do... this is going to be interesting. New vec3d of forward x for next height forward dot z. And same thing but backwards. Alright, so the train at this point, I'm going to quit out of this world. When I run it up that slope, it should follow it up. It should bumpily go up the slope. Sorry, Hope, this is not going to be available for mobile. A, it's too heavy, and B, the code that runs Minecraft on mobile is completely different. Same with Xbox. I'm only ever planning on supporting the Java version of Minecraft. Yeah. I'm actually hoping that eventually Microsoft gives up on trying to develop the Java version and just lets the community do what it does best. I mean, I'm not even talking about mods that I've written, but just seeing what a bunch of other modders do. Like, anytime Microsoft makes one of these like content updates with like some new stuff and breaks everything, there's at least one modder ports that functionality back to old versions of Minecraft in a matter of days, where I hate to be mean, but the Mojang developers really, I honestly don't know what they do, other than just try and break different pieces of the code. I understand that they try and optimize bits and pieces of it over time, and that is welcome. But it's... what the heck is going on here? Oh. Yeah, it's just a pain that every time we try and do something, they're always changing the guts in a really weird way. So the good news is that's kind of working. I suspect there may be other issues with it, but... Alright, so there's that. Okay. So we're setting gag height and rail height correctly, but it's not following it as we'd expect. So let's set up another test track over here. Straight. 30's fine. That, and do a slope. Let's see if this code works for this case. I don't think it will, but we're going to find out. Oh, now that's interesting. That does work for that case. Not well, granted, but... So there's something special about how this is doing it. I don't understand. Alright, so if I leave that parked here, I can think about this. It's still higher off the ground than it would be normally, I think. I don't know. Seems like it goes up halfway and then it just stops. So let's go back to our placement codes, because we've verified that it works by looking at this slope, because this slope works just fine. And it looks the same, and it should be the same, but it's very clearly not the same. Yeah, that's... yeah, pretty close. Yeah, that's pretty much on task. Let's go back to the height, because it looks like that height is... it's calculated the track bed height correctly, which is interesting. I wonder if this persists on a reload. I suspect it does. Whoa. Fatal crash. That was pretty good. libjvm does. So am I running out of memory? Nope, I got plenty of memory. Well, we'll hop back in game and give that a try. While that's loading, I'm going to take a look. Yep. Really just get position.getY plus rail get height plus height offset. Though interestingly enough, the rail height is distinct from the height of the bed. But that still should be the same. So we've got builder custom and height accumulator. P1 dot distance to P2 times height. That should work, unless this distance isn't going as for what I expect. If anything, it should be longer, or higher. That's still buried in the ground. Yeah, that's still... I mean, it's following the right pieces of track, it's just not getting the right height. Does not make sense. Let's add some debug. So let's take a look at what height accumulator looks like by the end, because it should be close to the total height. So that's the height accumulator. Is there anything else we want to debug while we're here? Let's play with this real quick. Break this out of the way. Just because I wanted to test this out. Because when I place this like this, I just want to make sure that this works. Because last time I tested it wasn't. Yeah. So that has to do with enum facing. I think. But no, that's off on a couple things. Placement position. I still need to figure out why it only works in the north direction. Okay, we'll give this another couple tweaks and prods and see if we can get it working. I'm also going to run this in debug mode, which means that I can add breakpoints where I need to, instead of having to relaunch Minecraft. So I can set it up so it stops the code at a particular location. Alright. And starting Minecraft. Let's see, anyone pinging me on Discord? Let's see what's going on in general. Nice buffers. Yeah, it's the way the track following system works. Buffers are a pain in the rear to implement, which I will do eventually, but it's just going to take time. Suggestions: spark effects at wheels while braking. That could be fun. Train teleporting? God no. There's no way I would actually implement that. Yep. Yeah. So the way that trains work is I override the Minecraft's movement system completely, and I override parts of the networking system as well. So that's just not... Yeah, sparks would be neat and wouldn't be too hard to do. Let's see, development. Anyone asking questions in here? Bum. People posting screenshots. Okay. And here we are. So I'm going to make this smaller and go back to Java. So that's interesting. One of those got a 1.0. That's interesting. I'm wondering if it's not storing that correctly. The only piece of track around here that's flexible should be this piece here. So if we break this, we clear that out a little bit. Actually, I can just click the clear button and replace this. Yeah, it's going to be a pain in the rear. So that's set to 0. And you can see this by the wild debug. Ah! This is going to be interesting. Yep. This F8 to continue. Remove breakpoint and run. Okay, better. Alright, that works really well. And that's ending at 1, so that's calculating correctly. And if I come back here, and I place invalid block without parent, which is what we expect, sort of, and then we get 1.01. That's close enough for what I'm doing. And that's still 1.1 toward the end. This is very confusing. Okay, so let's park it on the slope, and I'm going to put in a debug spot. Actually, I'm not going to park it on the slope. I'm going to park it back here. And we're going to go back to movement track. So we should be hitting this right here. And this rail.getRail height should be working, but it seems to be... Let's just take one more last look through this code before I go through the hassle of debugging this. Builder slope. Again, all I'm doing is doing current.y plus height. Yeah, that's the same rough logic I've got for that. Okay. So we're going to debug this, and I don't know how this is going to work. Okay, so we got this, we've got movement track. Alright, so we're curious what next height is going to be. So we're going to... Can I actually use my mouse? I can't. Oh, here we go. This is a tile rail. What type is it? Type is custom. This is exactly what we want. Okay. Wise, get rail, get height. Actually, let's get builder.get path. Actually, we should have the height inside of close as well. So if we look at these positions, it's 130 of this. If we go toward the ones at the end, we do have a height here. You know what? We should be using that instead. That's what we should be doing. Let's just stop this. So instead of using the rail.getRail height, which I don't trust for the new stuff I've been writing, no, it's not even going to be rail, it's going to be the close. And if you're wondering what close is, it's close spelt wrong. Close versus close. Can someone in chat help me with this? Like, if anyone is ever looking at the code and seeing awful stuff, this is why. Have they added the daylight to the mod? I know that's on some people's lists. Other modelers would know better than I. I'm not going to be on for too much longer. Projects at work are keeping me very busy. So I actually haven't had a ton of time to work on this. I just sat down after work today and was messing around. Alright, fingers crossed, and hopefully this won't go completely nuts. So far so good. Look at that! And it actually accelerates up the curve because my math is terrible. But that's a whole nother problem. That is a first for immersive railroading, I think. Still a little bit funky, but that doesn't, heck, that doesn't even need interpolation at that point. That's a little bit bumpy. Alright, now we've got to try heights that are significantly higher. And once we get that working, I'm going to commit what I have, push it to a branch, and probably be done for the night. And just to confirm, I have not broken this code, because we're using the same code for these two types of slopes. Yep, that works just fine. Whoa! And it definitely likes to... Oh, you know, it's because it's... Okay, I know why. I need to normalize that vector. Okay, so you saw how I was kind of speeding up as stuff was moving along? It's because I'm actually going further because I'm going up in addition to going... so I'm going X and Z, but I'm also going a little bit Y. So just to be safe, what we're going to do is we're going to do .normalize, then .scale of distance meters. And so what this is doing, so normalize is, let's say you've got a vector that looks, if you look where I'm kind of drawing down here, let's say you've got a vector that goes like, I can actually draw this. GIMP. GIMP can solve all of my problems. New. Okay, giant thing to draw on. And let's make this that. Okay, so let's say here's 0, and then you've got a vector that looks like this. So that's what it looks like. And I can't draw this in 3 dimensions because that's just going to be too hard. So I've got a vector starting here and ending here. And let's say this is 0, 0, and this is 5, 5. A normalized vector would be about here-ish, which is going to be... Oh, I should have done this with better numbers. This is going to be... darn. It's going to be a point along here, and I actually don't know what it's going to be. But it's going to be a point along here where this distance from here to here is equal to 1. Like the number 1. And then, so we get this to equal the distance for this to be 1, and then we scale it back down to the actual size we want. I'm not sure how much that made sense, but normalize and then scale gets you to this exact distance in meters. And I need to do this to both of these, and this should fix the issue where it was going up slopes weird. Or I'm going to say worse than usual. Okay. Backwards, next height, normalize, scale, distance meters. Right, we're looking at close.y. Oh yeah, so we fixed that code. Now let's try making this go up 2 blocks. Let's move you back a little bit. Do that. And place down our magical thing, which is still rendering funny. Link it up. Move you 1 up. That's not what I wanted. Perfect. And we're going to go like this. That. And that is not what I want. Kind of curious why it only went up that far. I guess the next question is what happens. So this goes up to here. To here. Brings us to that, which is still not quite high enough. If we go up 1 more. Here. So that's okay. So somewhere in my math, I'm not scaling that height correctly. So I've got to multiply that by 2. So let's. So we've got this custom thing. So this is our height accumulator, our slope. Oh yeah, I'm dividing the slope by 2. I shouldn't be doing that. Huh. Should I be doing that? I don't think I should be doing that. I'm not entirely convinced that that's going to fix what I want it to fix, but we're going to find out. Alright. But the other problem is you see the pieces of track that it's placing down are massive. So I'm going to need to fix that as well. This should work, but again, at this point we have blocks that are way too high. Minecraft does not like blocks that are this big. But I'm kind of curious if it works, and we'll fix it later. Yeah, there's something a little bit wrong there. Let's see. In theory, this should climb just fine. Other than it getting stuck because the block is too big. Alright, so we know that's an issue now. Okay, come back to here, place this down, clear out some of that out of my inventory, and go back to the code. So what we need to do is take a look and do item track blueprint. This is going to be... Bah. Whoa. Something weird's going on. Oh, okay, that's what it moved the code all the way over here for some reason. Let's go here and do that. And quit out of Minecraft. So what we want to do is we want to place the blocks going up as they go up, which I realize now doesn't make any sense when I say it out loud. But what we want to do is we want to check to see if... let's see, so we've got our... This is builder custom, we want builder iterator. So we want to see if this height is greater than 1. And I mean, bed heights are actually working right now, but, so this gagpose.y, this is what we want to mess with. So we're going to do, actually, gagpose.y modulo 1. Modulo 1. So this will means that gagpose.y can only ever go up to the value 1 before looping back on itself, and going back down to 0. So, but what we need to do is see if gagpose.y is greater than a certain amount. So, oh boy, we need to add another one of these stupid maps. Each one of these maps represents a 2-dimensional block position. Can I actually, I could do it. I think it's going to be cleaner if I do it in that other spot. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, it'll be... no, because I still need to do it for main, but no, main could be weird as well. Okay, we'll do it here, I think. Yeah. Instead of rail height, this is going to be y offset. Alright, so we've got our y offsets. And so we're going to do y offset dot put of this same pair, which I should really just make a variable of. And we're going to do, the value we're putting here is gagpose.y, but what we're going to do is we're going to get the floor value of this, math.floor. So math.floor means if you've got 0.0, or 0.1, it's 0, 0.5, it's 0, 0.7, it's 0, 0.9999999, it's still 0. If you have 1.0001 or 1, it's 1, or 1.5, it's 1, 1.7, it's 1. It's essentially taking whatever comes after the decimal point and just chopping it off directly. And we gotta add a cast to a float. And okay. So instead of a 0 here, this is going to be... I'm gonna do int main y equals 0, because I think this might break in some weird places. I don't actually need to override that. This might break in a couple weird places. Okay, no new chat messages. Okay. So this right here is going to... right. Oh, no, okay, never mind. I'm talking myself in circles. We're going to do y offset of, this is going to be pair dot of main x and main z. Oh, that's an int, right? Duh. Because these are just individual steps up. Cast that to int. Okay. What's interesting in Java is math.floor does not return an integer. It returns like a double or a float, depending on what you pass in. Okay, so we got our y offsets here. We also need to do the same thing down here of pair. And that might work. So we're going to try it. What do I move this all the way over here? Just set this down in this little... There we go. Everything's in its place. Let's see, electrics. Yeah, that's another thing, is electrics will be coming probably in 1.5. I'm not going to say definitely, but there's a pretty good chance. I figured out some of the harder bits and pieces behind that. The hardest part is transferring power between unloaded chunks. When you have... where's my IDE? When you have unloaded chunks, but you want to have generators on the other side of those unloaded chunks, you need a way to walk through the rails in those chunks and look at the connections without actually loading them and lagging out the server. I implemented something that I think is going to be really clever, but I need to test it a lot before I can really confirm to using it. Or not confirm. Conform? Commit. That's the word I'm looking for. Commit. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really tricky problem. I've actually been putting it off for longer than I'd like to admit. Okay, so let's see what I fixed with this. Ah! Whoops. Render data points.get of I minus 1. Oh, that's the other check I need to do. I plus 1. Because that's 0. So if points.size is... Wait, how is I... my previous... one. I'm just going to leave pitch and just do a else if here. I have no idea how I managed to do that. Comment in there. Let's try this again. While I'm waiting, I'm going to check out a branch. What should I call this branch? Let's spin. That's still going. That's going to take a while. Alright. I feel like I'm saying alright a lot. At least I'm not saying it 3 times in a row. That would just be weird. Yeah, I also need to limit the angle of deflection in these. Whoa, that's too high. Actually, no, that is kind of what we were looking for. Alright, and look at that. Check that out. If you look closely at what it's doing, and I'm not sure why that's rendering red. That's probably something else I'm screwing up. But you see how there's a blank underneath there, which means I need to go through and set the rail bed fill to, let's do white concrete just for fun. Place. Look at that. That might actually work. Okay. Ooh, I want to place down another piece of track up here. Where'd my train go? I'm not going to ride it next time that happens. So I'm just going to give it a push. And go back over here. Pull this open. Poof! Kind of curious where it's going. Ooh boy. Now I'm really in trouble. I don't know what I broke. Let's go back to what I changed since the last iteration. I added that slope divided by 2 in there. Builder custom, that's where we were. Slope. Equals that. Let's leave the divided by 2 in there and see what happens. I'm still not entirely sure what to make of that. Maybe the normalize that I added here was the wrong idea. Or inside of movement track. Let's make sure I did that right. Normalize, scale, distance meters. I'm actually going to, just for the sake of making sure I'm not shooting myself in the foot while I'm doing this, I'm going to disable that code and relaunch. Alright, we got about another 15 minutes before I need to... And Eclipse froze. So we're going to kill Eclipse and restart it because it sometimes just likes to die. And waiting for Eclipse to load. Bum, ba, bum, ba, bum. Let's see, I have all sorts of crap open. Okay, Eclipse is open, and I should be able to... Oh, that's annoying. Oh, I know why that doesn't work. Oh. Alright, I'm going to have to rewrite that later. I do know what I'm doing wrong there, though, which is good. That was really dumb. Oh, come on, Eclipse. I just want to run Java. Did you ever check out that branch? It did, okay. I've got all my windows messed up. Okay. Actually, I'll fix that later. One thing at a time. I've got to get this in a working state, commit it, and then I can start fiddling with it a little bit more. let's see. Roundhouse is talking about the blue version of the Peppercorn A1. Yeah, I can't wait to see what all the modelers do with all the different texture variants. I know Larky, or Matthew Lark, um, is has like a couple hundred variants for some of his stuff. So I'm kind of curious what that's going to do to the people's graphics cards. But depending on his texture size, it might be fine. Yeah. I also hope people like this new uploading IR textures piece. 58 on the Hunslet. That's a lot. Um, yeah. This should also fix the issue where when you were trying to load into a world that was remote, so trying to join a network game, and it was the first time you'd launch that client, it would sit there and hang at the building world screen while it was loading some immersive railroading stuff. Whoa, that is not expected. Actually, no, that is because I changed that math. So let's break you. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, so it does break all that eventually. So place you there, link up, and link to here. No, I think I did want that division there. Alright, I don't want that division there. But that works for now. Let's see if we go flying off into space now. I think this will work. I give this like an 85% chance of working, but it's 15% chance of me that doesn't want to go flying off the edge of the map. There we go. Whoop, not enough power. Gotta get a little bit of a run up to this. We made it! Look at that. Stop before I go off the edge. Excellent. Let's try doing a large horseshoe curve or something like that that's like 30 blocks up. Because right now this actually doesn't have a size limit on it, if you were wondering. Let's go way off this way, as long as it's still in the render distance. Let's do like some sort of weird curve. Go up a bunch. Yeah, that's still a little bit funky. That should not have the division by 2 in there. But, and I gotta break some of these blocks. Okay. Clear out some of the space on this side. And change the rail bed. I can't wait to see people make all sorts of crazy through the mountain stuff with this now. That's been one of the biggest blockers, I think, to people making this sort of stuff. Let's do that just for a contrast. That's, yeah. Boom! Look at that. I am tickled pink by that. That's fantastic. Yeah, Larky, I'm not sure you can actually have 1,000, though you're more than welcome to try. Look at this. This is fantastic. Whoa, it's going off the edge a little bit. So my math's doing something a little bit funky there. Yeah, Nathan, I cannot... So this combined with, like, Terrarium would be just incredible. You could have actual, like, one-to-one level worlds with this. Alright. So that's that. Let's go through and fiddle with some stuff. Actually, you know what? Let's do the one thing I want to fiddle with first. Is this. I get rid of the divided by 2 here. And the thing is this... Custom info placement position .y. This was set during item track endpoint click. was positioned down. That actually should work. What's that true? Alright, well that's still more accurate than the other way at this point. Okay, so I'm going to commit what I have now. This we want to add. Copy paste. We want that, and we want this, and we want this. This file is part of some other work that I did that I forgot to commit. Okay. Okay, start track. And now, if any brave soul really wants to play with this, you can now pull down the code from GitHub and build it yourself. Though, do so at your own risk. Yeah. Alright, so the next test I'd like to do is coming back down from this level. So let's set the rail bed on here to something different. And come over here, and that's interesting. I'm not even sure I'll be able to place stuff here that I want, but we're gonna find out. Ooh, no, this. If this works, I'm gonna be very, very surprised. Oh, right, because I still don't know why it doesn't do the north-south correctly. So I just need to place down some different track. I'm gonna wipe out some of the stuff over here and try it. Actually, here would be perfect. So place our block there. Go from here to all the way out here. That's interesting. That's probably negative, if I had to guess. Oh, yeah, see, that is negative right there. So let's save what we have. And let's take a look at that code. We got about 5 more minutes. If you've got any questions, ask them now. I'm going to be signing off soon. So we got our delta, we got our blueprint custom, and blueprint. This is what we want. Movement track, builder slope, builder iterator. This is what we want. Come up here. Rail heights. Offset. That's doing mod 1. Let's move this out into its own. Equals. Nope, we want to do this, which will make it positive, but way too big, modulo 1. That's actually still not what we want. Darn. So, floor of that. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Let's go back to what it's doing now in the code. Oh, yeah, right, because it's doing that. So, right, let's try going... Well, first I'm going to try placing this and see what happens, just out of curiosity. Breaks horribly. Okay. uh, yeah, I can go down really far and it still doesn't bring that down the way it should. So I'm going to abandon doing that for now, and I think I'm probably going to call it a night, but I'll just play around on this slope a little bit more. But yeah, it's making good progress. Enjoyed all the different questions. Let's see. Hello, Midwestern and Western Railroad in the comments. Yep. I think next time I do this, I'm going to try and get a little bit more rest beforehand, or try and do it on a weekend where I'm not quite so exhausted. Whoa, right off the edge. That's good. But yeah, that should be a good preview. What's coming with Immersive Railroading, and if you want to check out the code or any comments and concerns, and if you've made it this far without falling asleep watching me program, leave some comments about what you like to see when I'm going through this, what parts of it you enjoy. This was really just unplanned, and I messed around with this as I went. But this could definitely be more structured if you've got questions on programming different pieces of Immersive Railroading. Feel free to ask. Yeah. So, thanks everyone for hanging out. I'm gonna park this up here and take a screenshot for the video. Whatchamacallit? Thumbnail. All right. Cool. I will hopefully see you all in the next one.